Here's another great photo. This is Abbas Attar. Not sure if I pronounced that one correctly, but he's a magnum photographer. And I wanted to point out these arabesques. He's got the fire hose, obviously, going along the ground. You know, it's an arabesque. But what else is cool is this water is spraying, creating an arabesque. And also the building is falling, creating an arc and arabesque. So that's pretty interesting. He's got a nice aerial perspective in the background. You can see that going on, creating great figure ground relationship on this guy. They could have even perhaps lightened this telephone pole here, or this light pole, just to create even better figure ground relationship on his back. But one thing I noticed that, I mean, if you needed to nitpick on stuff, there is one area that's, you know, if this wasn't a perfect image and you had to nitpick, I would choose this area right here, because where the building is falling, it's actually behind this light pole, but since that's a coincidence, it looks like it's connected to this light pole here. So I edited that out, small little edit, and you can see how they're both separated now. So it creates a clear story there. That's just nitpicking though, it's really great shot. So this is a great photo right here, very stylistic artist, avant-garde, experimental fashion photographer. And he's got nice figure ground relationship. You can see here, if you draw an imaginary line around the subject, it's going to be well defined against that blank background. That's nice. I'm going to put up a video of him using lighting effects in his photo shoot, and you'll see how he does this type of effect. He's got that motion blur. He's got really sporadic lighting everywhere. This is almost blown out on her face. It's right here on her stomach's kind of almost blown out. Just really random, but it's very stylistic. He's controlling the contrast around the edges, which is good. If you run your eyes around the edges of the image, there's no high contrast pulling our eyes away from this main focal point here. So I edited more contrast in just to show you what that would be. So right here I added more contrast in the lower left corner. And when I turn that on, if you squint, you can see how it pops out. So that high contrast near the edge pulls our eyes down to the lower left corner. That's not good. So he controlled the contrast very well in this, pulling our eyes right to her face, which is good. Using this reddish color to draw our attention to her blouse up here. Lots of awesome textures in this, in the dress, the blouse, and the background. Stylistic lighting, great figure ground relationship. He's adding life with that motion blur. Nice motion blur there. This is a great landscape painting. It's one of my favorite landscape painters. If we look close, there's a group of people down here, little dog. This person right here is separate from the other group, like she's kind of like a loner by herself. And then we look to the right, there's some horses over here, nice trees, and then the distant mountains. Very cool scene, but we'll show you the grids he's using. When you measure the frame of the composition and look in the back of the dynamic symmetry book at the ratio guide, you can get a few different options for the grid that he used, and then you can measure the diagonals within the composition to see if it matches up, and then you've got kind of a winner for your grid. So in this case we have the root 5 overlapping increment 2, and then you can use a more refined grid to organize the smaller details within the composition. If we look close, we'll see all these areas locking in, the people in the boat, this boat down here, the rocks, these people over here, these rocks here, and I'll zoom out and we can see how the repeating diagonals within the mountainside, that's occurring there, that's gamut. And if we look at the finer details, it's even interesting to see how he's got the angle of this horse's head right on this diagonal right here. All right, so Tintoretto. This one, I couldn't find the original one that was requested, so I had to go with another one. But this is a great image. Just had to point out a few things. There's bad figure ground relationship here on this. If you look closer, there's kind of a lion in the shadows here. Can't really tell what's going on there. So that's really bad figure ground relationship. Perhaps it's a study for a larger painting. He's drawing our eyes to this subject here with the red. And then if we look closer at that subject, this subject is holding a lamb, okay? That's all part of the story, and that's where he's drawing our eyes to. There's also a nice contrast behind this character, and then he's by this other main character here. And this guy's in the center of the composition. We've got that balancing act from the vertical center line with a group here and then a group here. Okay, so nice balance from left to right. And then he's using this window for depth, so a lot of these old masters would include a window so you could see out the window and then these smaller elements in the distance. Add some aerial perspective there to just add to the story and create some depth. Also, the gazing direction is interesting because all of these characters here And I forgot to label these guys down here, but they're also looking this way. So everybody's looking this way, and then these guys are looking this way. And these ghosts, they look like ghosts, but they're looking this way. So something is about to happen here, or this guy's coming over here, or they're all expecting these ghosts to come in here. I'm not sure why everybody's looking in that area, but they're preparing for something. And it looks like that they could be preparing for these ghost-looking people to come through the window and appear here. I'm not sure, but very interesting painting. This is a cool painting. I remember seeing this a long time ago, and I liked the style of that. Just real simple, but creative, with nice figure-ground relationship on all the fruits. So he's got the contrast of the red up here, drawing our eyes to there, and then inevitably our eyes will kind of swing down this way because he's created an arc there for us, an arc swinging down. Interesting how he's hanging these objects from strings, and then these are resting on the ledge of the window sill. He's got this slice of cantaloupe out of the larger cantaloupe, and we can see that maybe he's creating a story. Perhaps since this piece is smaller and he cut out the seeds, you can see the seeds are cut out, and it's smaller than this cutout right here. So maybe he's creating a story where he ate the other piece. Not sure if that's kind of what he's trying to tell us, but kind of an interesting little side story that the artist created. So we've got this contrast in the upper left corner, but if we flip the image, we can see how it shifts the whole composition. Now we get a lot of energy coming up from this lower left corner and then up to the right. But unfortunately, when you have that, we don't have anything else pulling our eyes into this area. So that kind of sticks the eyes in this area and reduces some of the movement. The energy of this movement is nice, but then we're kind of stagnant in this area. Nothing to pull our eyes over here. So we can see that flipped. The way we read left to right, I call that magnetic momentum. So it has to deal with the contrast and then also the way we read left to right. So we could look over here, but yeah, they won't get stuck over there because we're used to reading from left to right and top to bottom. So that's some interesting stuff with contrast and how you can control it. Edward Hopper, another great artist. He seems to have inspired Gregory Crewdson a lot with his ambiguous type of scenes. He's pulling our eyes with this red over here, the woman with red hair and a red outfit on. And like the other painting, the Caravaggio painting, if we wanted to emphasize this area of red, we could reduce the red in this area up here and in these countertops and stuff, and then that would accentuate the red in this woman. So let's do that and see what it looks like. So now we've got that red covered up, and now we can definitely see how it emphasizes this woman quite a bit. So that's before and that's after. Just a real quick Photoshop job to show you what that looks like. So he's using 3 phi rectangles side by side. So when they're rotated like this, they're actually considered reciprocals. Okay, and I'll show you that. So we're used to seeing a phi rectangle like this on the side, but when they're rotated like this, they're considered reciprocals because they can fit inside the mother. But if you want to learn more about dynamic symmetry, I have tons of videos on it, but we can see how this fits inside the rectangle. And then we have that square right here. So this is a square, and then we have the smaller phi rectangle. But that just shows you a little bit of the geometry of the phi grids. And with those phi rectangles in place, I'm going to reduce the opacity of them, and then we'll look to where he adds these horizontals and verticals, and we'll see that they're aligning to these eyes. So whenever there's an intersection point within the grid, you get an eye. If you draw a line down from that intersection point, you're taking advantage of the geometry of the grid. So all these are lining up with the eyes of the grid. So you can see how Edward Hopper is using dynamic symmetry and the phi rectangle to organize his composition. Okay, and then the last one is El Greco. It's a great painting. I would consider it a master copy remake because it's Laocoon and His Sons. It's a very famous mythological story, but we can see how El Greco has ellipses within this composition. Let me turn it on and off, and you can start to see how he's designed ellipses within the composition to create unity and movement. You can see how it's even coming up through the contrast of the clouds around the body to the foot, and then around the arm, and then the head. So a lot of movement, a lot of unity going on when you use ellipses like that. He's got tons of triangles. If you didn't see this when we first viewed the image, he's got tons of triangles hidden within there. You can probably sense it, like these ones, you could probably sense it. You know, that one, perhaps this one. Might get a feeling of that geometry that he's developing there, but these definitely have a lot of triangles hidden within there. A lot of coincidences, these edge-to-edge relationships. When you're using dynamic symmetry, they're automatically promoted. If you know the technique, you can emphasize them even more. If you've got this guy designed down here and you're ready to paint your sky, you can think, okay, well, how can I create more unity? Well, I can just run this line from his nose, the armpit, and his fingers, and I can create more unity if I create some contrast up here in the clouds. And I'll do it a little bit more here and run it down. So you make these edge-to-edge relationships, unify the foreground and background, and you create this unity and movement within your composition. Very nice job. So that's it for this round. I appreciate you guys joining in and look forward to the cinematography video. I'll be posting that as soon as it's done editing, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for all the support.